we're here to do our big one. Do you see the shirt? Just give a little tribute to the shirt. I do have a Songbirds and Snakes shirt, but I just wanted to feature the PETA shirt. Come on, guys, PETA. I think we all know, and based on the title, we all know what I'm going to be talking about here today. That is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, where she just took another opportunity to destroy our souls, and this is all your guys' fault, because it wouldn't have happened if we would have liked the President Snow edits and kept making President Snow thirst traps. This is all your fault. I did not participate in that trend at all. I didn't do it. I honestly really think that's why she ripped our hearts out even more in this, and I have a lot to talk about, and I actually wrote it down just so I could try to keep my thoughts kind of together. But they are still pretty jumbled up in the way that I wrote them down as well, so a lot of things are going to be different. I'm going to try to talk about the beginning and the beginning, the middle and the middle, but I've also jumbled things up because there's just so much to talk about with this book and what it brought us. It brought us stuff from Catching Fire. It brought us more information from Lucy Gray's. Like, I'm just... this book has me in a chokehold. I cannot stop thinking about it. I cannot stop watching edits. I cannot stop watching fan theories. And I just can't get over this book. So let's just first off hop into the review. I don't even know how to review this because it's top tier. Like, I want to say 5 out of 5 stars. I want to say this is probably one of my favorite Hunger Games books because it's probably the one that destroyed me and traumatized me the most. So that's why I want to say that. And usually the books that destroy and traumatize me are the ones that are like the best books ever. Little Life say that. And this book just absolutely consumed me and my entire being when I read it. So we're just gonna try to hop into it. But yes, 5 out of 5 stars as my rating. I'll rate this high. If you are a fan of dystopian, if you are a fan of the Hunger Games, you need to read this. You need to read this because we're talking about it today. We're talking about it, and honestly, I'm gonna film this video with the assumption that everyone who is watching this video has read it. So it's going to be kind of like a book club. I'm just going to be discussing it because I need to talk about what has happened in this book. And so I guess that's kind of a recap, but it needs to be done. I can't live like this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. So here is my list. I kept it to 2 pages. I kept it pretty brief. Kept it pretty brief. I just read them for my first note. Opening scene. I don't remember it ever being discussed in the other Hunger Games books. But it's his birthday? It's his birthday? It's his birthday. It's Hamish's birthday. It's his birthday. For everybody else, it's a horrible day. For him, it's supposed to be a celebration. He doesn't even get that. It's on his birthday. So, wanted to talk a little bit about, like, him working as, like, what do they call it? Like, in him making the alcohol legally, but him, like, never drinking it. The fact that he even claimed whenever him and Plutarch were having a conversation, whenever Plutarch brought him to his mansion or whatever and was like, do you want to drink? He's like, I don't drink. So if that doesn't give you a glimpse of it into who Hamish before and how much he really did change from this, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that really blew my mind when I figured that out, because I thought he would at least drink some. He doesn't drink at all. Like, that's just crazy to me that, like, it's just insanity, this whole beginning of this book. I also want to give honor to Woodbine Chance, who I do believe that some people have came out and said that he one of his ancestors is one of the people that in Songbirds and Snakes, he was one of the people who were hanged because they were being rebellious. So that gives his family back the rebellious streak, and I love that about him. And the fact that he ran, I was actually so surprised and very sad by that scene, the way they just like shot him dead. That was insane. So I just want to give an honor to Woodbine Chance for leaving, for doing the last rebellious act he could before he died. That's honestly, but it did lead to Haymitch being reaped illegally, which is what we're going to get into now, because it's just crazy how much it does connect to how we kind of see him interact in the Hunger Games, which is so weird because this came out after the Hunger Games. But the way that Haymitch got illegally reaped was because his girlfriend Lenore Dove, who is a Covey member, which we will get into later, we will definitely get into that later, who is a Covey member, was trying to help the mother of Woodbine Chance after all of that had went down and Woodbine had died, and he intervened with the peacekeepers, and that was the reason that they were like, well, guess we found our replacement. I literally think that was the line, was it looks like we found our replacement. And it just brings me back, and a lot of people were also talking about it on TikTok, brings me back to maybe how he was feeling later on when he stepped in for the stepped in between the peacekeeper and Katniss and stood up to the peacekeepers again for Katniss. We're also going to get into a lot of the connections about Katniss, because that's honestly like she was born for the revolution, and the way people say it is that like Lucy was like the gunpowder, Haymitch was the ignition, and Katniss was the flame that lit it all on fire. And that is really how I see it as well. Yeah, I just think because we've seen how obviously how the drawings can get rigged. We saw that in Songbird and Snake when obviously the mayor rigged it so Lucy would win, the mayor's daughter, because she didn't like her. But never in my life, because obviously it's not shown, what I have believed that they would reap somebody illegally. Like, his name was not picked, and it is insane that his name was in there 40 times and he was still reaped illegally. That is just heartbreaking and devastating, and that is just probably the first one where I would have snapped. The other thing that I want to point out is Wyatt Callow and the fact that he was reaped his last, like, how heartbreaking is that on your last year, you're 18, like you're about to be 19, because I think 18 is the cutoff. You're about to be 19, you're at the last cutoff, and that is when you get called to the Hunger Games. It's just as bad as like when a 12-year-old, when a like an 11-year-old, like a first, like a baby, like what? And let's not mention Luella, who is an actual child. Like, I'm pretty sure she was 12 years old in this, and she, heartbreaking. So we're gonna pause on that heartbreaking talk, and we're gonna get into what I want to talk about so bad, because when I first saw it and saw all the connections, I was like, okay, so it's confirmed. She confirmed it for us. Katniss and Lucy Gray are related by some way. They share like I think somebody else like made a I need to look for that. Hold on. Lenore Dove, who is a Covey member and whose mom died during childbirth, so we don't meet her mother, but lives with, I don't want to say Tibet. Why can't I remember their names? Clark, Clementine, and Tam Ember. And if you remember, Tam Ember was in the Songbird, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. He was in the band with Lucy Gray. He knew Lucy Gray. He was family to Lucy Gray, right? So if Tam Ember is family to Lenore Dove, and Lenore Dove is a Covey member, she is related to them in that sense. Okay, so obviously we got that out of the way. Lenore Dove is a Covey member related to some way, and Lucy Gray Baird related to Tam Ember, right? Then we find out that Burdock Everdeen, which is Katniss's dad, okay, Katniss's dad, Burdock Everdeen, is distant cousins or cousins with Lenore Dove, who is a Covey member. So that means the Everdeens, Burdock, which is Katniss's dad, is related to Lenore Dove, who is a Covey member, which creates a direct line and shows kind of that line between the Coveys and the Everdeens. And somebody pointed out that later, because later on we do see Maud Ivory's grave whenever we see all the unmarked gravesite, or like the grave sites that are hidden for the Coveys. we see Maud Ivory's, and a lot of people have made that connection that Maud Ivory is Lenore Dove's mother. And so that Lenore and Maud Ivory was obviously directly related to Lucy Gray. So then Lenore Dove would be directly related to Lucy Gray. And if she is related to Burdock Everdeen and Burdock Everdeen had Katniss, then Katniss is related to Lucy Gray along the line somewhere. Somebody made a timeline and I'm trying to find it. Okay. Okay, I found it. So the three cousins, Lucy Gray, Maud, and Barb Azure. Barb Azure had Burdock. We're assuming that that is who Burdock Everdeen's mother is, who then married Astrid, who then had Katniss, who's cousins with Maud Ivory, who had Lenore Dove, who was cousins with Burdock Everdeen. Direct relation, they're related. And while we are already on the topic of Burdock Everdeen, let's just discuss how Burdock Everdeen is literally Haymitch's best friend. They were portrayed as best friends in this book. We also see how Burdock is trying to go after Astrid, who is friends with Maisie. Maisie is another person who is chosen for the Hunger Games, is another girl along Luella. But before we get to her, I just want to talk about Burdock Everdeen and the fact that Katniss's dad, and we also see in the epilogue of this book that Haymitch met Katniss when she was a baby, because I mean they were friends. The fact that it was Katniss who pulled him out of the alcoholism, it was Katniss who pulled him out of all of it and who showed him that there could actually be hope, there could actually be catching fire. Like, you know, that connection just blew my mind, just because like it shows how much he could care for her on a deeper level, because that is his best friend's daughter, and I just think that is insane. I think that's just another insane thing to point out that I think a lot of people need to talk about more. Okay, like that is crazy to me. That's crazy to me. I just love that for him, that he still has a piece of his best friend later on. Like that just is amazing to me. He has a lot of pieces of everybody within her, and we're gonna get to that as well. A little bit when we talk about Maisie Donner, one of the richer people, and this, I think it also shows how the odds aren't fair and how fewer people, even with their name in it so little times, can still get chosen, because her name was in there like very few times and Maisie still got chosen. And if we remember correctly, Maisie Donner is the original owner of the Mockingjay pin that was created and given to her by Tam Amber. She was the original owner, and what breaks my heart about this, and something I think we should know, is that she never, with all the fight that she had, she was fighting her way through that entire Hunger Games as soon as it started. And the fact that she never knew what her pin like actually became, and that her pin actually did come out of the Hunger Games with a symbol and some and like I think that is just very sad, and it's so important to note that like how powerful that that is. Like that's crazy. It's a symbol of Maisie almost coming out, like almost like she was with her in a sense, and I think Haymitch kind of would have thought that as well, thinking back on Maisie and thinking about that being her pen and how it finally came out of the arena. And I think I just love that idea, and I love thinking about that, and when I go back and rewatch, that's something I'm definitely going to be thinking about, is Maisie Donner, and also the fact that Maisie Donner was Astrid's best friend, and that Astrid is Katniss's mother, so that makes it even more of a connection, and makes us think long and hard also about how she was really feeling whenever like her daughter's name, Prim, was called for the games, and then eventually her other daughter went in anyways, and she probably was thinking about her best friend that whole time. Like her best friend never came out. So yeah, I can imagine the heartbreak and the shutdown that would have happened. So it's hard to it's like hard not to blame her, but it's hard to fully blame her for the way that she acted when everything had happened. Also, it's just crazy. It's just insane. It is this all the connections. We're not even halfway through my notes yet. It's insane. There's so much to talk about. Talk about Luella McCoy, or is that her name? I can't remember her last name, but That is the fact that Hamish called her sweetheart, and that was Hamish's sweetheart because she had a crush on him when they were little, and that he like that was his only goal, was to protect her during the games. And she also wore braids, which later we figure out that he, as soon as he sees Katniss and her braids remind him of Luella, and he calls Katniss sweetheart as a nickname almost immediately, like almost greeting an old friend. That's how I thought about it. And I just love that he can also have that connection within her for his sweetheart as well, and to have Luella kind of almost living on as well. I think that's really, I love that. I love that connection, and that people have thought about that, and that I think that's beautiful. I love it, love it, love it. She was technically she's just not the first, but the second death. And I'm just gonna read a line because I don't really know how else to talk about it. I'm just gonna read this line. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. And this was during all the poor planning when the birds attacked and the carriages crashed. It says, I realize the blood isn't mine, that fate isn't mine, and the tribute who's escaped the arena is Luella. Because even though Hamish tried to shield her with his body, she still died during the crash. And also just this, just his act of rebellion of picking her up and carrying her directly up to President Snow, and being like, and basically telling him to own this death because of the poor planning that happened in going into this. And I think that act of rebellion just shows so much. Just that one little act of rebellion just shows so much about Hamish and who he was as a person. And that broke his heart. It broke all of our hearts. Let's be honest, guys. I'm not ready for this on-screen death at all whatsoever. I don't think any of us are. I don't think any of us are ready for any of them at this point. This is probably going to be the most brutal, and I will continuously say that because I think this book has been the most brutal Hunger Games that I've read. It has been the most heartbreaking, the most just everything, every word that I can think of. It has been that. Okay, it has been that. My next note just says Lulu. Yeah, Susan really made sure that everyone who liked and saved a President Snow edit was reminded of who President Snow is. Of who President Snow is. In that moment, the moment that we were introduced to Lulu, and that Hamish was forced to be introduced to Lulu. And I think that whole entire situation was messed up. They do believe that she was originally a girl from 11 and was just created for the benefit. And I also just think that shows how fake the Capitol is. They created. It just breaks my heart because I'm also thinking about the earpiece that she had, and that even immediately when Hamish got into the games, he wanted to not see anybody's death, but the one thing that the Capitol told Lulu was to find Hamish, and because they wanted him to suffer even more. And that just twisting the knife. Honestly, that's what that is. It's twisting the knife in a wound that is already wide open. Okay. This book is so heartbreaking, and the relationship just between them, how they kind of already claimed her. And Wyatt, we see that he's like a broker boy, which is they make bets about on the Hunger Games, and obviously he's probably going to be bet on. His dad is the one that runs the bets. We see that they even point out, Maisley and Hamish even point out that it was weird for him to run straight for the cornucopia because he's a Booker boy, so he knows not to do that because they've seen it, how it plays out. But he did it anyways to save Lulu, and to kind of, I even think, to make sure that his dad didn't make any money off of him, and make sure that he got the death that he wanted. And I think that's really what happened there. And I think honestly that's probably one of the sadder moments for me, especially just thinking about his dad at home, because I don't want to fully defend him in what they did, making money off of the deaths of people. But a lot of people just completely hate Wyatt's dad, but we do see at the very end that Haymitch asks who the fifth grave is for and learns that it is Wyatt's dad because he killed himself because of the death of his son. So I think that also shows, it also just helps to show how the families of the Hunger Games dealt with the aftermath and the trauma and how it really did break families. And so that I think that was just a very important moment to include and talk about as well because I don't want to see all the hate on Wyatt's dad. So yeah, I wish Wyatt would have lived a little longer. Honestly, like I just wish he didn't die at all, you know. But yeah, he was like one of the first people that died, and that makes me really sad. Another thing, I just really want to read this line from Maisie because the fact that she fought her way through, and I just want to read this one line. Maisie leaves the world the way she wanted, wounded but not bowed. Wounded but not bowed. And I also think the use of the birds to kill her was just another blow to Haymitch as well, and the use of the birds in general was just a blow and a blow to Haymitch, and a reminder of Lenore Dove. And I think just shows even more the relation between Snow and the Cubbies and Haymitch as well. It just kills me. Kills me. I want to try to get into less sad stuff, so I want to try to get past this a little fast. But we do see Mags and Wyrus as mentors. We see them not crazy. The Hunger Games didn't make them crazy, the Capitol did. Mags can talk, she's perfectly fine. Wyrus is not crazy. That's something that Haymitch notes. That a lot of people come out crazy, but that she did not. That Wyrus did not, but that they were. But then later on in the Catching Fire, we see how they became crazy, and they're like Mags doesn't talk anymore and Wyrus is just crazy. But they're not. They were never they weren't. They were created that way because of Capitol torture and the way that the Capitol treated them, and I think is another crazy thing to point out. And the fact that Suzanne brought them back and had them be Haymitch's mentors, and also were one of the first two people that Katniss chose for Catching Fire, as well as Beetee, who was a mentor for his tributes, and his son as punishment for rebellious things that his father did. Ambert, Beetee's son, being in the games as a punishment to Beetee just makes this entire games just another add of messed up and traumatic. And I think another grave thing to point out is the fact that Beetee was the one at the potato light up station, and how Katniss is always referred to as the swamp potato. The swamp potato, and he showed Haymitch how to light the potato. He was one of the first people that was trying to show Haymitch how to blow up the Hunger Games, and later on we see that Katniss finally completed that for him, which I'm so happy that it finally happened for him, and that he had a hand in that as well, even though he failed the first time. But just the fact that like the symbolism that like him and Haymitch almost kind of like lit the potato together to create the flame that happened later on, it's just insane. I also want to add Plutarch being in this as well, and Plutarch being being one of the first people, or being one that tells Haymitch like how to be rebellious and how to try to fight back and how to try to stop the Hunger Games. And then we see him later on doing the same thing, makes it just so much better because we really see why Haymitch trusts him later on. And also that there is rebellion happening in the Capitol, and there's been rebellion happening in the Capitol for so long, and that there is people in the Capitol that do not agree with what is happening. And we see that with Plutarch, like he's been like for years he's been trying to end the Hunger Games, and I just think that is insane. I just think that's insane. I just think that's insane. Also, while I'm mentioning this, I also want to mention how Beetee's son in the games had like the worst death. The squirrels, the worst death ever, and I think that was it's probably the worst, one of the worst deaths, just because I know how Beetee was probably feeling in that moment, and we see him later and how he's still alive and he's still like living after this happened to his son. And there's one that I want to read, the one line, because it's just really sad, and I like it as well. A cannon fires somewhere, Beetee's heart breaks into fragments so small it can never be repaired. And it just makes me so, I don't know, just everything. It's just so sad. So sad. So sad. I knew nobody who loved him was gonna live. I knew it, but I didn't think it would be as bad as it was, because immediately upon stepping off of the train with the caskets, fire. Immediately, as the first thing that happened to him when he came back to the Hunger Games was he ran to his house and saw that it was on fire and that his mom and his brother were inside burning alive. Snow did that. That's another reminder from Susan who Snow is. I also want to add how this entire book is another reminder of how our government kind of is and how it can be. I didn't want to add that throughout the entire video, but I do want to add that now, that whenever I was reading this, it did really make me think about the consequences of the government and some of the things that are kind of similar in the ideologies. It just really makes me think, and I also want to implore you guys to think about that, because I think it's very important to think about how this book connects with our governmental system. Yes. And the worst of all, the worst of all, the fact that Haymitch still was holding out hope for Lenore Dove and her own just to be released, only to be killed and poisoned by Snow in front of Haymitch. Another blow. Just keep piling them on, Susan. Just keep piling them on, because we're coming for you. And just, it breaks my heart, and the fact that she is buried with the other Cubbies who are buried in unknown grave sites that are away from other people, where most people don't know but their family, and the fact that not even Snow knows this. Not even Snow knows this, so he can never reach the Cubbies ever again, and I love that knowledge. I love that fact. And it's beautiful. I just can't get over it. And later on, a lot of people point out that when we see the scene at the end of the Hunger Games movies, Mockingjay Part 2, we see her, Katniss, and Pia's children playing on, like, even in the book it describes them playing on grave sites. It all comes full circle. They were playing on the Cubbies' grave sites. And that just, it just is crazy. It just is crazy how everything really does come full circle in the end, and how it all just really connects. It all just really connects. I also want to point out that in the epilogue of this, Haymitch finally tells Peeta and Katniss his entire story. Another thing I didn't mention was that Lenore Dove raised geese. That was like her thing. She raised geese. She loved her geese. Those were like her. That was for her babies, basically. And at the end of this book, we see that. Well, also in Mockingjay, we see that Haymitch is raising geese. But in this, we see that after he tells them of his story, that it's Katniss who's the one who gives him the geese eggs to raise. And someone also pointed out how that's the first time we ever see Katniss we see Katniss from somebody else's POV, and I think that's interesting as well. And I think that wraps it up perfectly. I think this entire book and movie is going to be brutal and heartbreaking, but I think if they know how to wrap it up, they can wrap it up well for it to tie all together. And it's insanity. This entire book was insanity. I don't really know how to make any closing remarks for this video, because I think we just talked about so much and there was so much going on. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed talking about Sunrise on the Reaping, because I enjoyed talking about it, and I'm really so excited for this movie to come out. This book was amazing. Oh yeah, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!